Hi, my name is Scott Simmons. I'm the pastor here at Faith United Church of Christ, and I'd like to share with you an update about the first quarter of 2021. We started off the quarter with 10 people joining the church, and we're so glad to have you as part of our community. We had a Bible study that a lot of you attended. We've had several new volunteers with our tech team and our food pantry and elsewhere. Thank you so much for volunteering here. And we're back to in-person worship, which I couldn't be more excited about. The first quarter of 2021 also brought some difficulties. We've seen a decline in our giving. In 2020, we had roughly $48,000 given towards our budget in the first quarter, whereas in 2021, we've seen $35,000 come in. Now, I'd like to take us to something called the Church Growth Bell Curve, which is a tool that I've used several times with all of you and that I use to just kind of help understand where our church is and where it might go. At the beginning of 2020, I think that we were at the top end of the momentum growth stage of the growth side of the bell curve. This is a stage where it's lots of fun. New people are coming and they're becoming regulars and they're inviting their friends. And that's where we were at the beginning of 2020 with over 100 people on average in worship in those beginning months. And then the pandemic hit. And like many of you, we as a church went into just kind of a maintain stage, just trying to preserve and maintain where we were because we didn't know what the future would bring. And so we hopped over into the maintenance stage of the church growth bell curve. And when you're in the maintenance stage, sometimes the money can seem okay, and we actually did really well last year financially, but things have begun to slow down, and the methods of ministry become more important than the mission. And this is true about last year. Why? Because we, as a church, had to learn new methods to do the basic ministries of the church, including things like learning how to live stream and do all the technology stuff that is now part of our regular ministry. Now, to get back on the growth side, it's really simple. We just need to think of ourselves as engaging in a relaunch, of reconnecting with one another and reconnecting with our mission. And so I have a couple points to make about how we can begin that relaunch. The first is communication, just talking about where we are. So today's message represents part of that strategy. Another part of that strategy would simply be going back to our regular talk about giving in our worship service. We abandoned that for a few months for some reasons, but you can expect at the end of each service for me to connect your giving and generosity to the mission of Jesus Christ. And finally, in terms of communication, we're going to have some congregational meetings, and the first one that we're planning has to do with our cell tower. We have been provided with an opportunity to potentially sell the rights of our cell tower. Right now, we get a monthly income for that, but we could take the deal and get a lump sum. There's some disagreement about that in the church of what's the right thing to do. That's a healthy thing. But myself and the board, we're prepared to make a proposal to the church and let our church, our congregation, make a decision about that. If we were to decide to take that money, it would be quite a substantial sum of about $190,000. We could use that to bridge the gap on our budget, as well as invest in something significant here in the church, like fixing our parking lot or something else like that. Finally, we're going to just focus on reconnecting with one another. And the way we're going to do that is through a campaign called Love One Another. And there's three components to this. The first one is at the individual level. And this is where I'm going to ask each and every one of you to follow the link in my Friday email to take the Enneagram test. It's a personality test with 9 types. And then once you take the test, I'm going to ask that you share that with me and the leadership of the church so that we can share it amongst each other. And I think that if you take this test, you're going to learn some things about yourself. I think these things are helpful, but if we take it together, there will be this momentum we begin to gain. Then we're going to have a large group gathering in terms of I'm going to just preach on the Enneagram, biblical characters that embody each type throughout the entire summer. And after each of those Sunday sermons, we're going to have a small group gathering where we can go a little bit deeper, asking the question, in light of the particularities of that personality type, how do we love that person where they are? Because if you look at the way that Jesus loved other people, He loved them right where they were. It's quite amazing. And we as disciples of Jesus are called to love one another as Jesus loved us. Last week I preached on the book of Ruth. And the book of Ruth is an amazing story of a woman who through her loyalty is able to create a legacy that leads to King David and all the way to Jesus. It's amazing what God can do. And so I just want to leave with you a point that I made last week, which is simply this: that God's loving purpose can work through our loyal persistence. There's some ups and downs in the first quarter, some things to celebrate, some things to be concerned about, but one thing I am sure about is the calling on our church to learn to love one another and take that unconditional grace and love of God out into the community we are called to serve. And so we got to do the things we can do and trust God to do what only God can do. That is the skill of faith, and I couldn't be more excited to be part of this church, this gathering of Jesus followers, Faith United Church of Christ. Thank you for your time.